Upgraded 2.0. Thank you for joining with me, Kopi with Vans. That's right. We have upgraded a couple of things, and excitement of full enjoyfulness is coming up. Okay, today's topic is who has the rights. That's right. If you have been following Kopi events over the past one over year, every week we have different topics coming in. And for this particular month itself, every week we are starting another episode, or rather another season. On every Tuesday we cover lots of lifestyles that is pertaining to Singapore and other important pressing issues that we have. But of course we will keep our Wednesdays talk shows with Kopi events purely on health. That has been already all lined up. Thank you for joining once again, as usual, as signature. Before we start on, ta-da, okay, I hope everyone is having stay at home right now, be safe. Hope things will get better in Singapore, especially with the new variant that's going on. It's all a concern. I think every one of us should take precaution and stay safe and stay healthy. All right, without any ado, I'm going to talk a little bit on today's topic. But before I'm going to talk a little bit on topic, I'm going to get Mr. Stephen Lim, who is the Vice President of Safety and Education, Singapore Cycling Federation. And the very interesting topic of this particular gentleman is, I had a couple of talks with him over the past few days, and a very interesting topic that we talked about, that's of course cyclists and road users. I myself been a cyclist for almost about 20 years, and past 5 years I have given up cycling because of an incident, and I've shared that with Stephen Lim as well. So yes, I mean, there's a current pandemic and a lot of people are taking up cycling as an hobby, so it's very important to follow certain rules and guidelines and safety procedures as well, so that the road will be very interesting to be used by all people, especially safely. So without any ado, I'm going to bring my guest speaker, Mr. Stephen Lim. Hello, Mr.
Hi.
Stephen Lim, sir.
Hi, Vance. Thank you for having me here. Hi, everyone.
Thank you for joining us at Kopi Events. It's my pleasure to have you.
Yes.
Of course, before we go on, Mr. Stephen Lim, of course, I know what you have done before over the past 2-3 decades, but it would be best if you can just do a short introduction to the viewers, so viewers will understand you more better.
Right. Currently I'm the VP for Safety Education for Singapore Cycling Federation, but I didn't start off from here. So I mean, it's not the 2-3 decades but it's about 15 years ago. So back in 2006, I started volunteering with Safe Cycling Task Force. Right, and then about 2 years later, 2008, I took over as the president of the Safe Cycling Task Force. Then that's one thing leads to another. So I get roped into the predecessor of the current Active Mobility Advisory Panel. Previously, it was called Cycling Facilitation Committee. Right, then after which I think because the government needs to look at a wider perspective of mobility instead of just cycling. So we are now talking about active mobility. So which is why they set up this Active Mobility Advisory Panel. So I got roped in to ABAC as well. And then of course, I'm also a road safety champion with the traffic police, right? Then I'm I mean, there are other portfolios like the MParks volunteer group. So all these are all volunteers. Uh, I'm just spending my whatever time I have to do this, advocate cycling safety and road safety, right? So yeah, that's more or less about what I've been doing for the last 15 years, right? And of
Thank
course,
you.
I started cycling in the 80s during my teenage days, secondary school, right? And then I went on to become also a driver in the 90s, you know. So yeah, so I mean, that's pretty much about me.
Thank you, Mr. Stephen Lim from the Singapore Cycling Federation. He is currently the Vice President of Safety and Education in Singapore. Mr. Stephen, we had a
Yes,
great discussion over the past few days. We've
yeah,
been talking on topics that we want to create some awareness in Singapore as well. I mean, who has the rights actually doesn't really fit. I mean, as long as it comes to the road, everybody is a road user. But we're just talking about safety precautions. So maybe we want to talk about the current situation first that we are facing day to day. Maybe as a cyclist, you yourself has been a cyclist. How do you find when you actually when you cycle on the roads? How do you feel? Do you feel very welcome, or do you feel very tense, or do you always have to watch out? I know we had this discussion, but it's for viewers. So if you can share us your experiences as a cyclist, and then we can dive in more as the topic goes by.
sure. I think personally, when I cycle either alone or with my friends, um, I don't feel much pressure. I think it boils down to very much to um, how you reciprocate with other road users. I mean, as in the drivers, you know. So it is about all about communication. How you let the other road user know what you are doing, what are you going to do, right? Either you are going straight or you are going to make a turn or stop. You know. So I think it is a lot about that. And so far, yes, of course, once in a while I do have my fair share of close shave, that kind of thing. But then I don't think is that bad as in what some people describe it, or rather also, I mean, I think you and I would agree that there will always be bad apples in either group, right? So I don't think that's all. I just guess that it is kind of the current situation is kind of like blown out of proportion, due to the social media, right? But then otherwise, I personally I don't think is that bad on the road. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Stephen Lim, on the startup. But of course, as we discuss, we're going to go a little bit more deeper. And viewers, if you do have any question, please do share and spread the information as well. Or if you do have any question for Stephen Lim as well as myself, you can also comment at 818-77850. It's a WhatsApp only. If you do have questions, please type it out, and then we will able to answer with Stephen Lin's in terms of his expertise. Mr. Stephen Lin, sir, so we know that in cycling, especially in this pandemic, phase 1 to 2 to 3, and now we are going back to 2. I'm sure there's a lot of people who want to take up cycling at this point of time. I mean, there was a point of time that last year, I still remember in most of the places the cycle was sold out. You can't even get it in. So in this
Yes.
kind of situation, people who want to be healthy and fit, of course, you and I believe in that, to advocate and keeping fit and healthy. But someone who's just taking a bike with so much of full of N2 and they just want to get into the road, do you think is visible, or is there a suggestion that you will suggest as a safety and educator in Singapore? What will your suggestion be if someone would just take a bike and can I just go onto the road and just start cycling with the roads with the trucks and cars beside? What is your take on that, sir?
Okay, I think yeah, I think what we are seeing is that there are many more people actually pick up cycling since last year, right? So in fact, some of the shops are reporting, all the bikes are sold out. You have to go on waiting list, that kind of thing. And some brands I heard is as long as 1 year waiting list. But I think that is a good problem to have actually, right? So I think more people picking up cycling, people will be getting healthier, and then I think that works also along the line with our government's direction, in terms of car light vision, right? The first and last mile mobility, that kind of thing, which is a good thing, right? But like you say, if I'm a newbie, I'm completely new to cycling, so now I just got a bicycle. Is it advisable for me to just hit the road? I would say probably not, right? It's really not advisable, right? Because when you go out into the road, it's just like you are going into a jungle. It's a completely different environment, right? There are a lot more things that we need to know before we actually hit the road. Okay, some people advocates that
A lot more things that we need.
some people says that cycling is freedom, right? So cycling allows me to go everywhere. I agree with that, but I think there is something more than uh, that to understand the word, especially the word freedom. The key here is freedom. Freedom, I think a lot of people misunderstood it. Right? Freedom doesn't mean you have the freedom to you are free to do anything. But in fact, freedom means you are free to choose things that you do not want to do or you shouldn't do. I think that we should get the concept correct, right? So when you have that bicycle, it shouldn't be that I just hop on the bike and then I go everywhere. Right? I think first of all you need to understand like things like traffic rules, right? Things like code of conduct. What are the do's and don'ts on the road or on the park connectors or even on the footpath. So you need to go and find out and then study some of these traffic rules or code of conduct or rules governing the footpath or even PCN. These are essential. And the next thing you need to do is actually to have the know-how of how to handle the bike, right? For example, I mean, some people I've seen some newbie, when they get into a situation, the first thing that they do was immediately they put down the both leg and then they panic. They do not know actually what to do. But so you need to know that there are brakes on the bicycle, right? So you need to know how to handle your bike, brake accordingly, and not when I say brake, it doesn't mean that you straight away squeeze right through that hard onto your
Start
brake, right?
flying.
Right, you start flying. So how to handle that? I think all these are knowledges that we all need to know. But of course, I also agree that it may not be something that you just learn from someone and then you know it immediately. It takes practices. So one good way of doing this is actually to practice your skill, your riding skill, on a quieter park. Perhaps maybe not East Coast Park because East Coast Park on the weekend is quite crowded. Some other quieter parks, right? Start practicing your skill, your maneuvering skill, your braking skill, all this. Then you think about going further. Right? Like
Yeah.
one thing I was talking to you today, right? So one thing I've seen in some of the cycling groups, social interest group, right? So one minute you see somebody came in and say, hey, hello, I'm new here, I just started cycling last week, that kind of thing. And maybe 2 months, 3 months down the road, you see this guy is reporting that, hey, I just did my first round island trip, right? Or, hey, I just climbed Mount Faber. So I think it's good. It's not that we want to discourage anyone from doing any, such challenges. But I guess we need to do it progressively, right? So you instead of going straight to climb Mount Faber, perhaps you want to do a few rounds of Mandai, get used of how to climb the slopes, that kind of thing, right? Because I see some of the friends and say, hey, don't worry lah, you can do it. I mean, if you can't climb the Mount Faber, you just stop and push your bike. Yeah, I mean, on the surface, it sounds very encouraging, but to me, I mean, from the safety standpoint, I think these are encouraging people in the wrong way, right? Perhaps I will say, hey, come, let's go and do some slope training, right, before we hit. Because you must know that we don't close down Mount Faber for you to climb on that day. So there'll be cars, there'll be even coaches going up Mount Faber, right?
Process. Yeah.
So yeah, and then I'm sure you are a cyclist yourself. So I'm sure as a newbie, when you climb up the slope, when you're tired, you start to weep left and right, that kind of thing. So it becomes a danger, not only to yourself, but you're creating also danger to other people like the driver or maybe even other cyclists, going up together. So I think these are things that we need to know. We want to encourage people to ride, but then we want to encourage them in the proper way. So instead of getting them to climb Mount Faber today, why not you get your friend to go and do some slope training, that kind of thing, right? Then as we progress, then let's say, okay, then we, 2 months, 3 months later, then let's do the Mount Faber. But I think these are things for I would say to a newbie.
Sir, you said it so well. I think what you are trying to make a very strong point here is called adaptation. I think which is
Yes.
what we agreed on the few couple of days we talked about. I think adaptation is very important. I think it's full of entu. Someone who just get a bike and say, okay, I'm going to trade. I got all the time in the world right now with this current phrase to work from home.
Yes.
I mean, that's perfectly fine. But like what you said is straight to the point where safety precaution is very important, and awareness and climatization is also very important. We know that the
Yes.
most familiar or the famous road slope is in the Mount Faber. A lot of people go there, but like I said, a bus is coming or coach is coming.
Yes.
We don't see that in social media at this point of time. Of course, we're not mentioning any social media platforms, but we see
Yeah.
so many videos. That's our topic that we are going to talk on. There's so many topics or so many videos that we see that only one vision. It's only the dash cam of the car and then the cyclist, so maybe it's a perception because cyclists doesn't have a camera, even though they have, but not all cyclists will put a camera, because I think that going in the road, they say, oh, you don't pay the road tax, we pay so much of road tax. So I think there's a huge unbalance. I find a huge unbalance, but we agreed a couple of days that we talked about using the roads or the family or as a friendly place. Is there link up, and that is the most important thing, the linking up between the motorists and cyclists? Maybe you shared your experience with me that when you cycle you are always showing your hands and moving your, maybe we can talk that a little bit and get our viewers know what exactly the gesture that you're giving to the road users, especially the motorists, and they understands you.
Yes. So I think we mentioned earlier, right, that the thing is how you reciprocate with other road user, how you communicate. Now, unfortunately for bicycle, we don't have a brake light, we don't have a turn signal light. So the only way that we can communicate with other road user is through hand signals. And we are telling people to use the 4 very simple international hand signals, right? In fact, I say international is because all drivers who went through the driving school will understand these hand signals, right? They all learn about it. So if you want to make a right turn, you stretch out your right hand. If you make a left turn, then you stretch out your left hand, right? And then to stop, you will do 90 degrees this way and stop, right? So your palms, your palm. Can I see? Can you see? Okay, wait. All right. So your palms
Yeah, okay, yeah.
flat, your palms flat, and then you do a 90 degrees, and then that is stop, right? So everybody behind you can see that you're stopping. And then if you need to slow down, you just need to wave your hands up and down and then slow down. So these are just 4 very simple hand signal which we can use to communicate to drivers. So when I ride on the road, I see the amber light in front that so I start to wave my hand that I'm going to slow down. And then when I'm approaching nearer, I put up the 90 degrees hand signal and it says that I'm stopping, right? Yes, there are something else that is not in the taught in the driving school, which is we will usually wave our hands and say thanks, or you give a thumbs up, right? So when people give way to you, you just give a thumbs up, you wave and smile, right? I think with all this gesture, people understand you better, and then you get also a friendly reciprocal reaction. Usually, when I wave at them and thank you, they also wave back, right? And the other thing, quite importantly, is that I would suggest that when you ride on the road, always turn your head back to check for traffic, right? I mean, I know some people are advocating using of mirror because not everybody can turn the head. When they turn the head, the bike swerve as well. But that is something I think I should ask every cyclist to practice. Practice turning your head, not your body, just turning your head to check the traffic. Because this way, the drivers behind you will know that you are aware of what is going on behind you. You are aware that as a driver, I know that, oh, you know that I'm behind you, right? And then after which you follow by hand signals. Okay, so this gesture will actually tell people that you are aware of the situation surrounding you, instead of just looking straight ahead and then you just ride, right? And then the drivers behind don't know, hey, actually, do you know that I'm behind you or not? So then when I give a tap on the horn, horn is monotonous. Horn, yeah, the horn doesn't have a different tone where it sends you different messages. No, horn is just monotonous. So when I tap the horn, then it becomes especially when the day that maybe it's not your day. So you get agitated because, hey, why are you horning me? I know you are behind me, But the thing is that I do not know. So I think such things are what I would actually suggest cyclists to practice, turning your head to check traffic. Even you have a mirror, but you should just turn your head and check the traffic, and then giving a hand signal, and of course always wave thanks or give a thumbs up, to someone who give way to you, that kind of thing. I think it when you do, let's we always say, let's start from ourselves. So starting from myself, I treat the driver with respect, and I treat the driver nicely. I'm sure I will get a same reciprocal reaction, right? So I think that's how the way we should go, right? So even let's say if today I'm a driver, right? So I will give way to the cyclist, and then in return the cyclist will wave and say thanks. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
that makes everybody's day, right? We don't have to always go into this uh, um, situation where it's so tense that is that. No, now I think something also very important which I want to say is that road safety is never a me versus you situation. It's never who versus who, that kind of thing. We are all road user. We are all responsible for our own safety, as well as we are responsible of the safety of other road user. So your safety is a personal responsibility, right? But when it comes to road safety, it's a shared responsibility. Every user has a role to play. We all have a parts to play. Yeah, I think if we go along that line, we shouldn't be too wrong, and then we shouldn't be in such a like now what we are seeing, the tension, the kind of situation. It shouldn't be that way.
Mr. Stephen, I think we are right in schedule because we are just leading to the next topic, followed by a different segment. Because it's true, because I think the communication between the cyclists or even
Yes.
pedestrian also is very important. Because especially right now, when a car comes in and then a pedestrian just dash across, it also poses a very dangerous situation, especially for kids. And recently, I saw one video. A kid was just dashing across the road, and he was slightly just knocked, and good stuff that the driver make an emergency brake and the boy flew. So I think there's a lot of education that needed to be done, especially on our roads, and I'm sure our schools are doing a major part in education on traffic, on road safeties, and so forth. But I think it is just about getting a recall and understanding the basic things and reminding each other. But again, when we want to come back to the cycling one, because I want to share this story which happened in
Yes.
about 2015, if I'm not mistaken. So I've been cycling for a period of 15 years. I mean, for the viewers, a real incident that happened to me. So I'm always been found with a bicycle. I mean, I'm a crazy guy with a cycle, Changi coastal roads and ECPs and everywhere. Was taking part in a competition, meta sports, and suddenly what happened? Me and my very good brother, a client and good brother, was cycling in front of me. I mean, we trained well. He was cycling in front of me, and suddenly in front of me, it just the whole bicycle, the back wheel just crashed over him and slammed him down. And because of that, he put his elbow down. He got a huge fracture in his elbow joint, and he broken into a couple of pieces. So that incident actually disturbed me a lot because I was the one rushing him to the hospital, so and so forth. And there was a time that I decided maybe put the bike in the hanger first, hang it up for a while before going in. But there's been a lot of incident that happened in the cycling culture, family, especially because end of the day it's just two wheels. But we do see some videos that the buses or the cars are just coming close by to the cyclists. I mean, if a mishap to happen, I think it's matter of life and death. We are really looking about. It's a thin line. We talked about this cycling in one straight single file. But when we're coming to a slip road that we need to turn and the car is coming in, the car might get lost. I mean, I'm not sure whether to stop behind. If you stop behind, there's another car coming behind him, either horning
Yeah.
him. And if you horn to the cyclist, then the cyclists get very agitated. Why are you cycling at me? I mean, why are you horning at me? I'm cycling. So everybody plays a part. So in this confusion of a junction or a juncture, what is your best advice for us? I mean, for everyone who are listening to this.
Well, I think there are many kind of situation that we will encounter on the road, right? But firstly, I think is that when you mentioned about car coming too close, right, I think that happens all the time. Which I would actually, I mean, if some motorists are listening, I would actually like to urge that motorists don't do that. Okay. When you want to pass a cyclist, although there's no rule, but there's actually some advisory. And in fact, some of the countries, they actually make it a rule that you need to pass a cyclist with giving 1.5 meter space. Right? Although Singapore, it's not a rule, but then it's not about the rule, but it's about um, how to look after someone. Okay, I am very sure no drivers go out in the morning in the day and say that, hey, today I'm going to knock down one cyclist. I don't think anyone in the right mind will do that or even think about it, right? So if that is not the case, then why do you need to, for example, be so aggressive to a cyclist when you see one, when you try to pass the cyclist at a close proximity, that kind of thing. I don't think you want to do that, and I don't think you should do that. Because what a lot of drivers may not be, because unfortunately in Singapore, not all drivers are cyclists. So a lot of them may not understand about the some difficulties the cyclists face. See, we need to balance on two wheels. So somehow or rather, no matter how good my skill is, there will be some time where I will swerve a little left or a little right, right? Because we are trying to balance on two wheels. So what if I happen to swerve a little right and then you just happen to come so close, right? And all you need is perhaps say let's say a car, your wing mirror hit my elbow, and that will send me flying, right? Because the slightest touch from your wing mirror against my elbow will actually send the cyclist flying. And I'm sure, you don't want to do something and then regret about it later on. So there's no need to actually do such thing. I mean, if you can overtake on the next lane, do so. But if you can't, then perhaps it's just matter of maybe another 10 seconds, 20 seconds that you have to wait behind the cyclist. All right. Then of course on the cyclist side myself, I mean, this is what I do. When I come to such situation, knowing that, for example, a bus has been, or a lorry, or a car has been following behind me for a while, but of course, it's difficult. I also understand, because as a driver, I also understand that it may be difficult for the guy to overtake me, and then he don't want to risk overtaking me on the same lane. So what I do is, when further up the road, when I see the road may some road, the design may be a little bit wider, in front. So what I do is, when I reach there, I will keep more to the left, and then I'll wave and ask the driver to pass, right? And for such gesture, I actually get, they will usually wave and say thanks, that kind of thing, So because you see, we must understand that first thing is that, firstly, he has been nice to wait behind you. He didn't try and overtake you and then put you at risk, right? So I will try to be nice in return by slowing down and then let him pass. Right. So you see, it's in a way that the driver do not want to take risks and injure someone. I'm sure nobody wants that, right? And then it's also another way, if you look at it, is that as a cyclist, we also try to be considerate. We try to be nice to other road user, right? So if I can, then I will have to, I let the motorist pass, right? It's like, I enjoy cycling, so that is also like something, back. I mean, when you first pick up cycling, you enjoy cycling. So I don't see any reason that I want to take some risk and then maybe get myself into an accident, hurt myself, and then I cut short that cycling journey, right? So there's no reason to do so. So the more you love cycling, I think you should take more precaution, look after your own safety, right? I don't think we need to go into that. I think, and I think, Vance, you set the question, or the topic tonight at I think the question, who has the right? You put it very correctly, or maybe even timely, right? So because I think nowadays, many people start to talk about rights. You know, I mean, even COVID. You know, you ask people to put on the mask. Hey, it's my human rights. You know, that kind of thing, right? So people are starting to talk about rights. But I think when it comes to road safety, it's not about rights, and then we need to understand the word rights correctly. Okay, rights is that yes, you have the rights to be there, but then you don't own it, and then you don't have the rights to harm anyone, or even, you know, to create something dangerous for the environment or for the people using that place. So I think that thing we have to get it correctly, right? So even just now you mentioned about, hey, the kids dash across the you know, sometimes we will see quite a number of video, people running across the zebra crossing, or
Yeah.
even cyclists, right? So and then people start to say, hey, you know, it's a zebra crossing, so I have the right to be here to use the zebra crossing and walk across, and you should stop for me. Well, it is not wrong in a way. I mean, they talk about what they are talking is actually they are talking about right of way, right? But I would always like to caution people that be careful with this right of way. The understanding has to be correct, or to begin with. Now, right of way, it is something where the authority use to determine who is right or wrong when there's a case, you know, there's an accident. They use the right of way rule to apply it, and then to determine who's right or wrong. But right of way rule is not for user to apply it there and there. That means I cannot go onto a zebra crossing and say, hey, I have the right of way, so I don't have to look, and I just cross, right? That's wrong. Because at the end of the day, if I'm being run down, I'm injured. Unfortunately, I'm gone, too bad. So what if I win the case in court because of right of way, but I'm gone? So this thing has to get it right. So ever ever insist on your right of way, right? So I think that things like this, we I mean, there are a lot more to talk about, but I guess it's always about how we treat each other, that kind of thing, you know. I mean, I always like to say, you know, treat others like how you would like to be treated, right? So I'm not sure if you agree with this.
Totally. I totally agree with that. But like now we have also bring into the next segment, where we talked about, zebra crossings, or even the matter of traffic light. Who has the rights to turn right. I mean, there's an arrow, but sometimes there's no arrow, green arrow for cars to turn, but then a pedestrian is walking. As a motorist myself and yourself, when you want to turn right, and then you see these cyclists just dashing across, and we
Yeah.
see that lots of accidents happen in this segment of junction, and even for the matter of straight roads, which of course, a bit scary thing is, those big tractors or trailers are coming up at night, and probably drivers a little, dizzy or a little sleepy, probably dizzy,
Yeah.
should not be driving. So there's a lot of danger. Of course, you wear bright clothes, and that's perfectly fine. Cyclists always wear white, and getting the best reflectors to go. But one of the areas that we want to talk about here, Mr. Steven, is as we evolve, we do see that people are taking everything for their granted. I think, it's my green light, I just go. And also this pandemic, what has taught us, or many, that a lot of people who picked up a lot of part-time jobs, especially extra jobs like, delivery drivers, or even the bicycles and kind of stuff, working longer and harder than ever. But
Yes.
also to understand and giving them all the appreciation and the hard working they put in, but also they're putting themselves into danger, because they have to go all about speed. It's all about speed to earn that money. What is your advice to them? Because one part, if you look at it, is the speed. One part, if you look at them, is their safety. So when we put economic or financial versus safety, there's a big line. They're always rushing. Nothing against them, but they have to do that because that's a peak hour. If they lose it, they lose it. They will not be able to take back during these hard times some might going through, and a lot of them have this second job as delivery riders, especially in bicycles. What is your suggestion, sir? I mean, what is your advice to these people who are out there who may need some elements of your wisdom?
I think I think firstly, well, you talk about this making a right, cars making a right turn, and then pedestrians are crossing, on the red light crossing, right? That's, I think, if I'm not wrong, they call it discriminatory turning. Yeah,
Discretion, turning right.
yeah. So I would actually suggest to number one, the motorist. Okay, so actually what I do is I myself, when I drive, what I practice is I will wait, right? And before I make that move, right? Before I make that right turn, that move, I will actually look at both end of the opposite junction to make sure that there's no one trying to run across that sometimes, I mean, we always see this you see even pedestrian, when we see the green man blinking, then they still want to run across,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So uh we just, I mean, I can't stop them from doing that, although we try to ask them to not to do it. But then as a driver, what I do is I will make sure I take a look before I step on the accelerator and move off, right? On both end of the junction. Look out for the pedestrian, or maybe even a cyclist or a PMD rider that could actually, trying to beat that blinking green man and then dash across, right? So if someone is moving, what I will do is, even there's no oncoming car, if someone is on that crossing and moving, or whether the person is blocking or not blocking my way, I will actually stay still, wait here till they finish crossing, then I move over. So I think it's more of being a little bit more patient, look out for the vulnerable group, instead of just always trying to get ahead of someone or something. I think that's the key. But as for the one crossing, the pedestrian or the cyclist, I would say that please don't try your luck and try and run across, when you even see the green man blinking. And the other thing is that we mentioned earlier, it's not about the right of way, right? So as you are crossing, always look in the direction where the traffic is coming. That means if I'm crossing from here to the opposite, firstly is cars are coming from my right. So I'll have to, while I'm walking, I will have look at on my right. Okay. This way you can tell if there is any cars that actually fail to stop at the junction and then may run the right, that kind of thing. I'm not sure if you have seen it. There was actually a video some years back actually. All the cars in the 3-lane had stopped at the red light. Pedestrians start crossing, but unfortunately there was a motorcyclist that actually went through in between the cars and then hit the pedestrian, right? Motorcyclist was wrong, definitely, but then I think it's unfortunately that the pedestrian got hit and then injured. So I will advise that when you are crossing, please look at the direction where the traffic is coming. So when I reach over the other side, that means the car will be coming from my left, right? So I will turn around onto the left and start watching if there's any car. So if they are impatient driver that comes through, at least I see that they are moving, they are not stopping for me, I can take the next step, the next action. So it's both way. I think both way we have to, look out for each other. Both way we have to do things to actually protect yourself, right? So that's number one. And then we talk about just now. What was your next question again?
That the connection between the link between the motorist and the cyclist.
Yeah. So I think in such a situation, should, I think we all mentioned it earlier, the drivers has never the intention to actually harm anyone. But if that is your intention, you're not going to harm anyone, then I think you ought to be a bit more careful when you approach the cyclist. After all, as I said, we are balancing on two wheels, right? So it cannot be as stable as even in fact, even when I drive, when I see a motorcyclist next to me, I tend to be a bit more careful, because the problem that we face as a cyclist is more or less about the same as a motorcyclist, right? So the only difference is the power, probably. Okay, so I think we as a driver, since you're already sitting so comfortably inside the car, right? I think it doesn't hurt much by slowing down a little, waiting a few more seconds for the cyclist to pass, right? So like what we mentioned just now, if you are going to make a right turn and then you see someone trying to cross or a cyclist trying to ride across, I think it doesn't hurt waiting for the next 2-3 seconds after the cyclist pass before you cross it. You don't have to always cut across, that kind of thing. And then I think you just now you mentioned about like riding single file, how should you react? Yeah. So now I think this has been the talk of the town for the past 2-3 weeks, whether single file or double abreast, that kind of thing. Now there from the cyclist safety perspective, there is a safety reason why we advocate riding abreast, or why the authorities actually allow riding abreast. Now, the thing is, if say we have a group of 10 riders, for example, right? If you force everyone to ride in single file, the first and last rider, the length is going to stretch quite a distance, okay? And due to skills and stamina, strength, all these the differences, you may not have everyone following each other quite closely. And in fact, we don't encourage people to follow each other too closely, right? So there will always be some gap, okay? And unfortunately, because of some impatient driver, they tend to use that gap to cut the cyclist off and then make a left turn, that kind of thing. Right? Or the other scenario, let's say you are driving and then you're coming out from the small road. So when you see a group of 10 cyclists, in a long line coming, chances are you tend to exit that small road before the cyclists reach you. And that could actually pose a danger to the cyclist, right? But if we allow cycling abreast, okay, so that 10 riders, you will shorten the pack. So riding 2x2, so you have only 2 lines and then 5 columns. So the whole distance from the front to the back has been shortened, right, easily by half. So that actually, one is that it doesn't give, you don't have that gap that I was talking about. So it makes it safer for the cyclist. And on the other hand, if you think about from the motorist perspective, right, now you are passing the cyclist, you actually have a shorter group. You just imagine that group of cyclists is a car or maybe, a small size lorry. So you are now passing a small size lorry, right? Rather than you are trying to pass say 40-foot container, So it make it shorter. You can pass that cyclist, the pack of cyclists in a shorter time, right? Rather than if you force them to ride in the single group. And then of course, when you ride in the pack, it's more visible. So it makes it more, make it safer for the cyclist as well. Of course, the driver can spot the cyclist easily. So these are the safety reason why we advocate and cycling abreast, and then why the authorities actually allowed it. So I think it is how we interact with each other. When the motorists come across a cyclist riding in a group, how do we interact with each other? Yeah. But of course, yes.
I totally agree with you again. I mean, you are on dot and on point on all these angles we talk about. Even cycling in single file or double, you're coming in occupying one lane. I mean, there's a lot of things that are happening. But we do agree that we both agree, and of course our viewers also will be agreeing, because as we talk, we also have some messages that came in from our viewers, like from young we are taught to look right and left before crossing the roads. So she's as perspective of the pedestrian, and even in traffic lights and kind of stuff. But we also see a lot of things that's happening around, especially in junctions. Anybody approaching the junction have to slow down, ready to brake, even though it's green light. That's a basic responsibility. Oh, it's my green light, I'll just press another 30 kilometer more. And then if everybody does that, the junction will be full of accidents. And I think that is one of the reasons why the high risk factors, when we look at in terms of accident ratios, it always happens in the junction itself, because that's where all the 4 areas are coming in with lights, with people crossing, and so many things are happening. It's a huge thing that's happening at that. But I got to let you know, while this thing is happening, of course, people have to follow rules and regulations. That's all the time that we are always advocating it. It's rule, right? But coming in, the next topic, of course, we're going to go in is the horn. Especially, I thought I'd share with this before with you. I think about 2 weeks or 3 weeks back, I was at the zebra crossing, wanted to go, and then I saw these cyclists coming in very fast as possible. And then I just wanted to tap him as a horn, just to let him know, hey, I'm here, right? He just went in front and stopped, and then he challenged me. So I'm like, wow, this is crazy. Because if I were to stop and he going to confront, something is going to happen, and something will major will happen. So you think about it. I think it's the frustrations that being upon to the cyclist when a motorist horn at him, it's like, hey, you had a mistake. But no, I'm just letting you know that I'm here, buddy. But how is that going to be possible? I can't wind down and say, hey, I'm here. So horn, it's a very great topic. But as a cyclist, if I horn at you 2 times or 1 time, Pep, what will your reaction be, or what do you think the cyclist reaction should be? Not just pointing some hand signals and using some words, and I don't think so. That is a very courteous way of practicing on the road, because it creates tension.
Yes, yes. Okay, maybe I will start off with just now that answering just now that question. I mean what the viewer is not wrong that from young we were taught to look right, look left, then look right again. Yeah, it's not wrong. But I think things has changed. Currently, we are seeing more drivers are being so-called distracted, right? Because now you have GPS, that kind of thing. So people are distracted. So right now, when I go to school to do the talks, I actually tell the kids, ask them, red man, what do you do? And then they say, oh, red man, you must stop. Yeah, okay, good. So green man, they say go. Then I told them no. And then they will like look at me like, hey, why green man? I cannot go. So I told them no. Green man doesn't mean you see green man, that means you immediately you step on the road and then you start crossing. I think I say green man, you must first look at the direction of the car that is coming, right? Make sure that they stop for you before you start crossing. Right. And then just now I mentioned, when you're over the other side, you should start looking at the other side where the car is coming from the other direction. And the next thing is that about just now you mentioned, I think some of the cyclists probably still not sure about this. There's a rule now that says cyclists should actually stop at the zebra crossing before riding across, right? That stop at the zebra crossing is to ensure that you make sure you stop there, you check, and then the car stop for you before you ride across. And then it means you shouldn't just dash across like that. Okay, so that is the thing. But then there again, I always say, rules aside, we don't need a rules to govern how we live our life, right? It's all about our safety that is a major concern here. So likewise, that you mentioned about the delivery riders, they are pressed for times, that kind of thing. Yes, I mean I do understand. They're pressing for time. It's a they are making a living, so it's important to them. But then, what I do with when I meet some foreign workers, they are riding without lights, that kind of thing. So I told them, do you know that it's a rule here that you must put on the light? They say, yeah, that kind of thing. Or some of them say, no, I don't know. Yeah, but I said, but that's not important. It's not important. It's not the rules that are important. So I asked them, why are you here? So they say, oh, they travel thousands of kilometers, from different countries. They here. I say, I'm here to make more money for my family. I said, precisely that, right? So don't you think you want to keep yourself safe?
Yep.
In order to provide for your family. So likewise, I would like to also tell those delivery riders, that kind of thing. I mean, it's precisely what you are doing that that it's for the family, right? For yourself or for your family, that you are trying to make extra money, that kind of thing. But because of pressing for time, and then you start to forego safety, I think that's a foolish thing to do, right? I think the more you should actually look after your safety, right? And then so that you are able to, do whatever you are doing. It's just like just now what I'm saying. I mean, if you like cycling, you love cycling as a leisure activity or even a sport, there's no reason that you forego safety and then cut short that cycling journey, right? So I think you have to always put the priority correct, you know. So if safety is the important thing, let's look at it first. Okay. And as for the horn, that's why I mentioned earlier, you know, the horn is a monotonous thing, right? So you know, I even myself as a driver, sometimes, you know, I try to tap the horn, but unfortunately, at that situation, I kind of press too hard. So instead of a short beep, then it become a ping, you know, that kind of thing. So it's kind of difficult to manage that. Yeah. So one is perhaps you know, before you approach, like in your situation when you are coming to the bend where there's a zebra crossing. So perhaps before you approach there, I think the best thing to do is actually to or in fact not the best thing, but it's the correct thing to and the important thing to do is to slow down, just in case there are any you know, cyclists or, you know, or even jogger that actually dash across. So that's one thing. And by slowing down, and you are able to stop in time, not only that you can save the life, the person, you also can avoid, you know, tapping the horn, that kind of thing, right? So I as a driver, I actually hardly use my horn. I try not to use it because it sometimes get very intimidating, right? Intimidating, yeah. So that's the word. So I try to avoid using it. In fact, and then when I cycle, I don't use the bell as well. So I will just slow down and then, you know, just wait for the pedestrian, or, you know, you just say, hey, hello, good morning, excuse me, that kind of thing, and then people will let you pass. And after that, you just say thank you. I think there are things that we can do, you know. Of course, as a driver, I also realized that because over the years, more and more people are cycling or even using the PMB, that kind of thing. Then in, like, for example, the situation that you mentioned, so you're up on the main road and then you're making a left turn,
Left turn.
filter turn, yeah. Then you realize that say I'm driving, then I'm going straight, and then now in front the junction I'm making a left turn, filter lane, and then there's a zebra crossing. So actually before I reach that turn, I look out on the left to see if there's any cyclists or people are running, you know. So by doing that, I actually preempt myself, should I, you know, slow down, be prepared to stop at the zebra crossing, right? So I think with this is also actually in a way an environment change. So people have to start to adapt to all those changes. Yeah.
I mean, for the past almost 53 minutes, I mean, we are agreeing to each other's conversation. And I mean, it's such a fruitful session because we can keep on talking about this for the whole day and let the cow come back home, but it won't happen. But I think what is the point here we are trying to make is the awareness and a little bit
Yes.
of smile, a little bit of love, you know, just an encouragement. But because I do understand in the perspective of a cyclist, which I was before, and a motorist, because he is pumping and probably his heart rate is about 150, 160, and he's going at that moment. So any single motion or notion that, you know, that the agitation will comes in and it's like, hey, I'm using, why you're using. So it becomes a why me, or why can I use, or I'm paying more road tax. I mean, then all these thoughts will come in. I think we got to practice a little bit more gracious. I think that's what Stephen Lim also agrees as the guest speaker today for Singapore Cycling Federation, and he also the safety and education with Singapore Cycling Federation. I think the whole conversation we had earlier for past 54 minutes is just purely about getting awareness done and how one should be there. I mean, that's not the most correct answer, but there's many answers. But one of the possible ways of understanding, and I just want to share with you, sir, that, you know, last week when I was driving, it was actually a single road. I saw a mom putting, I mean, it's a child seat, and the child was sitting in it, and she was cycling in the center of that one single lane. So a couple of things that came into my thoughts as we are preparing for this talk, that was the plan for today, is what happens if, I mean, it should not happen, you know, should not nobody do, because our police force are very strict on drunk driving. But what happens at that point, at the time, if a drunk driver comes in and then he hits it, you know, of course, the rules and laws are there. But and if the life goes away, I think it's permanent. So I think in my context, I was just behind her and I was just thinking, oh, that's very dangerous, putting her two lives in it, and she's still cycling as if like there's no tomorrow. And even if she keep it to the left, I have to really go to my next lane, which is a single white line, which I can't supposed to go because online cars are coming on forward. So in that kind of situation, the motorists have to be patient. But
Yes.
I think there's still some education that we need to educate both motorists and cyclists. We can't say it's cyclists' fault or the motorists' fault, but it's a very gray area that we can talk about. But we will never able to get an answer for this.
Exactly. So maybe I start off with I think you mentioned about graciousness just now, right? So uh, this is also something I believe our government is trying to promote in the most recent 10 years or so, or in fact they have started this in the 80s where we have a courtesy campaign or this, right? So I think it is we all have to adopt that thing that we have to be gracious, we have to be nice to people, right? And we have to be kind. But I would say that kindness, in my understanding, in my context, is that I would say kindness, you start being kind to yourself. Okay. Why I say that is because be kind to yourself. Don't try and squeeze too many things into your life, or try and do too many things within that short period of time, right? Be kind to yourself. When you have that kind of um, freedom of time to manage your things, you are less, you get less agitated. It's because that we always try to squeeze too many things into our life, or too many things, we try to accomplish something within a very short time, right? Then it kind of pressurize ourselves. So even not driving, when you're home, then you get agitated over your wife say something, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think we should lead our life that way, right? And being kind to yourself, in turns, you can be kind to other people, right? Because I'm kind to myself, I give myself a lot of time to travel from point A to point B, right? So I am relaxed on the road. I don't have to rush, So I'm being kind to myself. But because of this action, I actually I'm also being kind to other road users, because then I don't have to rush. I don't have to, make a dangerous move. I don't endanger anyone, right? In fact, I even still have time to actually help someone, in distress. Someone's car breakdown, I can even help them, right? So these are, I think, it's my way of looking at it, right? And then when you talk about the mom riding on the center of the lane, right? Um, One thing I realize is that okay, there are people who advocates that. The reason they advocate that is for safety reason of the cyclists, right? And also in overseas countries, they actually allows that, and they make it a rule that cyclists or motorcyclists, you assume yourself as a car, right? And then you just take up the lane, right? And that becomes a rule. But uh, unfortunately, I don't think it is visible here in Singapore, right? Because of our road size, and then the number of traffic, that kind of thing. So it is not quite possible, which is why our rule says that cyclists have to keep to the left hand side of the road, right? And not but yes, if you are due to safety reason, you need to cycle in the middle lane. But I think the least you can do is you need to communicate, and not just ride, in front, and then looking in the front, and then you
Yeah.
don't tell anybody, right?
Yeah.
So maybe I gave you the example which we spoke about. When I ride with my friend in Neo Tiew is a very narrow road, two lane, two direction, right? Only one direction, it was only one lane, and it's also winding. So when the few of us, 4 5 of us, when we rode in single file. Uh, but there are times where I actually go move to the center of the lane, and I take up the lane.